Zia, welcome to the show. I've been excited to have you here for several weeks now, and the day's finally come. I'm really looking forward to chatting with you. I think a fun place to start might be you cut your teeth as a professional in the sales world and went through what is widely regarded, at least in our generation, as the top, or at least one of the top sales training programs, at least in its day, it certainly was at Xerox. And that skill set of sales often propels people into a lot of different professional functions. And you've translated a sales career into a COO role at a staffing company. Maybe you could start by sharing some of the deep lessons you learned in sales that you have found that translate really well, not only into the C-suite, but into operations or any other aspects of life.
So my sales experience and my sales journey was almost on accident. By the time I got into sales, I had already gotten my MBA. And when I got into sales, I don't know where everybody else's timelines are, but when I got into sales, it was during the Great Recession. And I didn't really want to be in sales. I thought I was better than that because I had an MBA, and I'm like, what am I going to go sell stuff for? I mean, look at all this education I have. I'm this. I thought very highly of myself for no particular reason because I had no experience. And I remember I was at Xerox. I spent 5 years in banking, not realizing I was good at sales when I was doing sales there. And then when I got into Xerox, it took me about a year to come to terms with the fact that I was a salesperson. I used to tell people I'm a consultant, I'm this. I'd come up with any synonym for sales that wasn't sales. And then I remember looking on the sales floor, and Xerox was smart about, they gave all the big guys offices, and then they threw everybody else in the bullpen, and they would kind of just like, everybody would fight it out. And I remember one day I'd look at the sales board, and the guy who was in first place of like us, the bullpen guys, I'm like, that guy stinks. He's not even smart. And I'm thinking to myself, how am I trailing to that guy? And I was really furious. I played sports my whole life, so competition's big for me. And I looked at him, and I remember staring at the board, looking back and forth, and I was like, what in the hell am I doing wrong? And then I started thinking to myself, the only difference is that guy tries. And I was trying my hardest not to try. And I think at that point, that's when I made the decision. And I think a lot of people, when it comes to sales, is they have to make the choice that I'm going to put in the work that's necessary to be successful. And at that moment, I knew what I had to do. I actually had to pick up the phone and make a phone call. I knew I had to go visit clients or prospects. I knew I had to start doing that stuff. And the second I made that choice, everything changed. There was no second place anymore. There was me, and then there was everybody else. And that's when I realized, I'm like, wait, I'm actually pretty good at this sales thing. Maybe I should look at this as like a career. And once that decision was made, I mean, sales took off. And at Xerox, you have a choice to make. And I think a lot of sales backgrounds, you have a choice to make. Once you get good at it, you have the option of, do I stay in sales for the rest of my life and I'm just a major account rep? Or do I go into sales leadership? And like an idiot, I went into leadership. And I say that because you work way more, get paid less. And it just like, it makes no sense. But
Way less.
I tell everybody, if you're good at sales and you don't like responsibility, stay the hell in sales. Do not move. It's like a wonderful place. You'll build this thing called a book of business that will continue to pay you out forever, and you never have to worry about it. So no, on the other hand, I got way more satisfaction helping people, because like at a certain point, the bullpen would just come to me with questions all the time. Like, hey, how did you do that? Hey, I've got this situation. What would you do? And I would get more fulfillment helping them get their deals. And I really like that. Situation came up, one of my best friends at the company, they were going to let him go for lack of production. And I knew what was going on. I said, hey, listen, let me work with him. I can guarantee I'll get his sales up. And management looked at me. They're like, you're going to put your reputation on him? I'm like, yeah, I got it. And within 3 months, he did more than he did the last year. And they're like, hey, what did you do? I'm like, I just stuck with him. I held him accountable. I worked with him. I taught him what I knew. I do stuff with him. And then at a certain point, he felt like he owed me to do the stuff he had to do for himself. And he took off. They gave me another person to work with. And then after that, they gave me an entire office to run. And that is it. So and it's funny you brought up the Xerox sales background. I actually came into Xerox after that.
Oh,
And so before, Xerox's sales training was unbelievable. They would take you I think today is like an underground bunker for the military. I think it's a Greenbrier or something, where they would host this unbelievable training for like a month. And when you left, you were a machine. But I think by the time I got to Xerox, things had changed a little more. It was a little more regional and it was more autonomous. And for us, it was more of they throw everybody out to the wolves and they see who comes back alive. So we were all net new business. They weren't giving us accounts to go work. It was just like, hey, here's a list of 500 accounts that we don't have that we would like to have. And our job is to go find a way to bring them in. And that's how they just threw us to the fire, and we saw who came back. I was one of the ones that came back. I was there for 8 years figuring that out.
so as you reflect on your sales career, the journey it took to get there, the skills you developed once you started trying, as you said, what are some of the deep-rooted lessons or skills that you learned at that, let's call it entry-level sales phase, right before you got great, but what are some of the things you learned getting past entry level that stick with you even into the C-suite today?
There are no mistakes. There are only learning. You're only learning. The only time you make a mistake is when you make the same mistake. You do the same thing wrong twice. So that's one of them. Like, I can't tell you how many stupid things I've said to a client that was just incredibly, like, I look at it now, I'm like, oh my God, I can't believe I said something like that. But what it is you just have to kind of have perspective on what you're saying and going back, fixing it, tweaking it, getting better at it. That's one. Number two, everything is law of large numbers. Every time I got a no, and if your mentality isn't every no puts you one step closer to a yes, sales is not for you. And as a guy who grew up not very attractive, I was told no all the time. I knew all I needed was one yes. All I needed was one yes, and everything was awesome. So go in with that mentality of you're going to get way more no's than you are yeses, and as long as you're okay with that, you're good. You have to really not take things personal. They don't want to hear from you. I tell everybody when you're in sales, you're their last priority until you're their first priority. So all you got to do is be consistent, and there is no such thing as luck. Luck is hard work and timing meeting up. That's all that it is. So if you make your 30, 40, 50 phone calls a day, you go visit 5, 10, 15 prospects a day, I guarantee you will be successful. It would be impossible. We had one of these old timers at the office, and he always made us laugh because you can tell he's just from the 80s of sales, and he would get mad at everybody for not having good work ethic. And we were like, what are you talking about? He goes, you could take a sandwich board and stand on the corner of a busy intersection and says, need a copier with your phone number, and you will get at least a phone call every day. And we started laughing. He was like, yeah, but he's right. Like, it's just effort. So I would tell everybody your effort is 100% more important than your education, than your charisma and all. If you have all the other things, yeah, it helps for sure. But you got to put the effort in. You have to fail. You have to put yourself out there to fail, and then you can be successful.
It's a great perspective, and you're right. It made me think if you're a salesperson and you're not saying stupid things to clients still, you're not taking enough risk to close enough deals. There's this, like, if you play it safe, you're going to get pretty vanilla results in any competitive industry, right? If you've got the hottest widget in the world, you don't even have to be good. You could crush it with a sandwich board. Yep. But if you're in a competitive space and you're not occasionally trying something new that has a high risk of failure, but also a grand slam potential, man, you're just probably never going to really bat above whatever the average is on your sales floor. So you had to go through that. How does there is no failure, it's just learning, translate into a high level operational role? There's a mechanistic difference between blowing it with one lead and you got a bunch more leads and altering operations in a way where the risk is higher, right? So how does that it's just learning translate responsibly into the way you think as an operator, not just a revenue generator?
It's more of a calculated risk at that point. So I'll do a lot more research, or I'll play out way more scenarios than just winging something and just trying and failing. Like before, when I say failing, you call somebody, hey, is John there? Like, hey, John, your copy release is coming up. You want to get together? And like, no. And you're like, okay, that's a failure. Right? Maybe I should come up with something better to say. Now, before, if I'm going to implement something big or something different here, it's far more calculated of a risk. meaning like I have to know what the risk reward is. Like for example, when I first got here, we had a client of ours that everybody was kind of on the fence. Do we keep this client? Do we get rid of this client? Their margins are low. Their response time to us is terrible. Their feedback isn't good enough. But we did a decent amount of business with them, but it wasn't the ideal client. So I sat down, I looked at it, and I said, okay, this account can either make us or break us because I'm losing a lot of morale with the recruitment team. They're putting in a ton of work and they're not getting any responses. We'll submit 30 candidates and we don't get any responses for 6 weeks. How am I supposed to tell a candidate for 6 weeks is, hey, hold on, they're getting back to us. So what we did is I said, listen, I got on the phone with their team and I said, listen, we're going to dedicate 50% of our entire workforce to your account. Here's our expectations. Our expectations are your line of communication with us improves and we start getting more hires. If you guys can do that, we'll have a great partnership together. If not, we're going to have to, like sever ties. And they were like, who do you guys think you are? You're some little company in Fort Lauderdale. They're a big time company. And so they were kind of floored. And then I told our team, like, hey, listen, this is what we're going to do. We're going to go all in. We're going to send 250 candidates to this client in the next 30 days. And all the recruiters are like, no, we don't want to do that. They never get back to us. I said, guys, I need 1 month. Let's go all in. If it works, they're a huge account. Everybody's going to make a ton of money. If they're not, we're never going to do business with them again. You saw everybody kind of do one of these. We went all in and we got the worst feedback imaginable and we severed ties that month. So we failed, but we failed forward because now I earned the trust of the recruitment team that I'm going to do what I said I'm going to do. Although we didn't get any business out of it, I wasted a month of resources. But what we did get out of that was we were able to clean up our clients to know where are we going to focus our time and energy. And after doing that, the morale in the office went up through the roof. They're like, all right, good. Now we never have to worry about that account again. That was a big failure, but it worked out in the long run.
You bring up a great point. The way you fail as a leader is a lot different than the way you fail as a salesperson. The way you fail, the consequences are obviously very different as you're articulating, right? And because the consequences are higher, you prep more, you think more, you weigh it out differently. Probably takes longer to come up with the gambit or the position you may want to take. But leading through failure is an entirely different skill than burning a lead and being like, well, screwed that one up. Right. What are some of the lessons you've had to learn about how to lead successfully when your gambits don't pay off?
Oh, number one, you have to be confident throughout the way. They can't see fear in your eyes. They can't see that you don't trust your gut. They have to know that you trust your gut. And then number two, they have to know it's okay to be wrong. And I'll tell them flat out, like, yeah, we really messed that one up, didn't we? Or like, hey, guys, that one's on me. Taking ownership of your failures is just as important as giving up the praise of the successes. And we can talk about that on a side note, but they have to know that you're not going to pass the blame of your failure to them. Right. And that's a big one. Because then if they're like, wait a second, if he's not in the trenches with me, I'm not going to follow this guy. So for me, it's you just have to own your loss. You just all right, hey, I messed up. It happens. I'm not perfect. The only thing perfect in the world is the 1972 Miami Dolphins. And we're not that.
Have you ever heard of Project Aristotle, the Google study?
I have not heard that one.
So what you're describing, right? Your team's willingness to acknowledge you failing and to realize that they are not at risk for failure is this concept of psychological safety. And there was this study that was done. I just learned about this earlier this year. It's called Project Aristotle.
I'm actually going to take that note because I kind of look into that.
Google did this study back, I want to say it was early 2000s in the aughts at some point. But they observed that they had a wild degree of variance in their performance across their teams. Why does one team perform so much better, even inside the same divisions, right? The variance when you're that large of a company is observable. And they're like, what the heck are the root factors of this? Okay. And they went in with all these hypotheses. It's obviously skill, it's experience, it's budget, it's all of these things. The study pointed to one specific thing as the number one differentiator of teams that continue to outperform. And then the four below it, numbers 2, 3, 4, and 5, were all dependent on the very first answer. And the number one differentiator was psychological safety, which they articulate as an individual's willingness to feel comfortable being wrong in front of their peers or boss because they didn't fear retribution, they didn't fear guilt, shame, any of the negative stuff associated with that. We screwed that one up. And so doing what I do, I'm very fascinated. That's an awesome concept, but like, what's the mechanism? How do you affect psychological safety? And one of the number one things that it goes on to say, and a lot of people have weighed in on, is your own willingness to be wrong as a leader and say, hey, what did we get wrong?
Yep.
What am I missing? How are we screwing this up? Promote the opportunity for people to tell the boss while they're wrong, and you create this flywheel of iteration where it's not just my brain anymore. Everybody can weigh in. No one, if it's a terrible idea, well, it's bad ideas to good ideas. That's okay. We can run with that. It sounds like that's a lesson that you learned. Was there a catalytic moment where you went, ooh, I need to get better at this? Or has that been something you're always pretty comfortable doing, taking that I might be wrong mentality and leading comfortably through that?
So that took a long time because it's hard to grow and be successful and not have a little ego that goes with it. And my ego, at this point, I'm going to be 41 this year. I've got 3. I'm going to have a 4th kid on the way. My ego's gone. I could care less. I'm like, the only place I have an ego is on the golf course, and that's because I'm ultra competitive. That's the last place I have left in my life where I can be that guy. But what I've learned was, once you have real self-confidence, once you really believe in yourself, you don't need anybody to tell you that you're good at something. But what you'll realize is people are going to be there. It means more to them for you to pass the praise to them and absorb their mistakes, because it'll help build their confidence to be the people you need them to be at your company later on. And that's just not in company, that's in life. Like, for example, if my kid messes up, that's my fault as a parent for not parenting them and they're making a mistake. If my kid, if I make a good dinner, like, for example, my 5-year-old, she loves cooking with me, right? So if I cook and the meal comes out good, I say, look, she helped me make this meal. Now, this is something silly, like with a 5-year-old. And then she in her head now has this unbelievable confidence of like, I can cook.
Yeah.
That's not just cooking. That's going to be in everything in life now. She's going to have the confidence to be better at things, to take the risk to try, because I'm good at this. I could also be good at this.
Yeah.
So it's a lot of passing the praise and absorbing the blame. That takes, and like, you kind of like, that did not come early. I hated the idea of it being my fault, because at the time I was still trying to prove myself. I've got nothing left to prove. I'm like, if you want it, you like me, you like me. You don't like, it's okay. I have enough friends. My wife likes me plenty, I think. So I don't need any more praise from anybody else. What I do need is I need to build a stronger team around me. Yeah. And I feel like that's the best way to get around to it.
Well, it seems like that leadership whiplash occurs, it especially occurs in the transition for salespeople into leadership roles, right? So much of what we're built at is young salespeople. And when I say young, I don't even mean age. I just mean young in the sales profession.
Sure.
You're built on the dopamine hit of success. And whether that means an ultimate outcome of a close or advancing them in the CRM to the next phase, right? And you've got your ratios and your metrics. You've got a scoreboard that's more developed than any other part of the business, right? That you can always have some degree of, look how good I am at this. And that's the game. Yep. And if you start trying, if you choose to play the game, that's the game. And so you optimize in the direction of that, and you're built at that point psychologically to thrive in an environment where your wins are public, and you're consistently keeping a high score. When you transition into sales leadership, you're still built that way. Just because I lived this, just because all of a sudden they're like, here's your title and your car and your Amex and your new salary, that doesn't mean shit about how good you are psychologically from decoupling from who you were that got you there. But you have to be a whole different person starting the first day you're a leader. And almost nobody does a good job of that transition, especially in sales.
I did a terrible job.
Was there a story or a moment where it clicked? Like, when did it turn?
Yeah, 2 things happened. One, I got real fortunate that early on in my when I went into leadership, the guy that I reported to, he's my best friend's dad. So I reported to him, which helped a lot because we were able to be closer and we had a different relationship. And I remember one of the times he looked at me, he goes, listen, I know why your team is successful. You don't need me to pat you on the back in front of everybody to tell everybody knows your team is successful because of you, but you don't need the praise anymore. You need to start passing that on to them. And I remember looking at him, I'm like, oh, wait, you know it's me? He's like, of course I know it's you. Like last month they sucked. This month they're good. You think that happened on accident? And I'm like, oh, I didn't. And again, I'm still thinking like a sales guy. And then when you start having that, knowing that behind the scenes, I had that, I had that support and that confidence in them. That helped me a ton in my mental psyche evolving. Number two was I read a book, The 5 Levels of Leadership by Maxwell. I mean, dude, I'll tell anybody, if you're entering the world of leadership, go read that book. Go get an audiobook, chat GPT it if you really want to. That book really, really puts leadership in a very organized structure of when you first get into it to when you're like the top of the food chain, and to kind of see where you are. That really changed my perspective a lot. That book really like stood out a ton. Really enjoyed it. And when I first got in, one of the cool parts was when they asked me to manage or to lead a branch, there were no surprises. One of the guys I remember in the bullpen goes, wait, he's not one of the managers? So it was a really easy transition versus somebody giving you a title. Now you have to earn their respect. They're like, oh no, wait, that already happened. So for me, it was like a really nice transition into leadership. So those are the two ones. One, having somebody there that helps guide you and like mentor you through like that initial 6 months is rough because everything's different. And then that book it really kind of spelled it out really easily, like really helped with that.
That's a great perspective. The value of feeling like you're in competent company is new in that transition for most salespeople, right? You have this is my lane. I'm great in my lane. I don't really have much of an optics to how management perceives me outside of this one zone of expertise. To then enter the world where other people are viewing your kingdom different scoreboard, you have to have a lot of confidence in that person, which I suspect, I know I have, you've met lots of sales leaders who do not feel like they have competent company there, right? And part of it's structural. Often marketing loves to have a reason to point at sales and say they won't close the deals very well. And account management loves to point at sales and say, you keep handing us hot turds, man. How am I supposed to keep these accounts, right? And sales likes to bitch at both of them back. So a lot of times there's a reason for the friction, but it sounds like you emerged into an environment where your mentor was able to quickly reassure you that no, we see the bigger picture of what this is, and that made it a lot easier for you. What guidance might you offer somebody who's not entering that setting, where when they emerge into the sales leadership role, they maybe don't feel that degree of confidence, maybe for a good reason, maybe just because they haven't been given the warm fuzzies yet, even though if they are in a good situation? How would you have done that if you didn't have maybe that mentor?
Probably would have taken me a lot longer to do it. 1, 2, you have to be able to assess really quickly who is part of your team and who's not. And I would say for me, like especially when you go into a leadership role, like when I first got here, within 6 months, half the people either quit or got fired because there's an expectation change that comes with it. And I remember when I first started here, and I talked to our owner, and I said, "Listen, man, if I'm coming on board, things are gonna get ruffled very quickly, and people are gonna come to you, and they're gonna complain about me." And he goes, "Good." I'm like, "All right, as long as we're on the same page." And I would say if you're coming in new, say you've taken over a team of 5, 10, 15 people, you need to quickly align yourself and realize who are my hard workers, and those are the people you want to keep around because you can't teach work ethic. You can develop sales skills. And you got to see who are the cancers in your office, who are the cancers on your team, who are the ones that are always negative. Negativity is the worst thing you can have. Like you have to cut that off immediately. I don't care what their numbers are. They might be one of your top producers, but if they're negative, they're going to bring down the rest of the team. You can find another producer. You're not going to be able to get rid of negativity because they'll bring down everybody else. The other thing I would tell you is once you start investing in people on a personal level, you'll see exponential returns on the professional side. So one of the things that I always worked on was trying to understand what are people's personal goals, like why are they in sales? Why do they need the money? And then you kind of work backward to, all right, these are the things you have to do to get to the thing you want to have. And that kind of passes, you want to be able to build internal accountability, internal expectations in them. So they might have a quota and they don't really care what their quota is, right? Because that's a number the company gave you. You have to do this. This is our quota. They're like, I don't really care about your quota. What I care about is I want to buy a new house. I want to have a new car. All right, well, so one of my guys, I remember he goes, listen, I'm tired of renting. I want to buy a place. I said, okay, so what do you want to buy? And we literally took an hour in my office. We broke down what he wanted to buy. We looked at down payment, interest rates. This is your monthly payment. This is how much you need to get down. How do we get you from where you are now to be able to afford this? And he goes, all right, so I got to make more money. I'm like, that's always the answer for almost anything. You got to make more money, right? So he goes, but how do I do that? I said, all right, are you ready for this? He goes, yeah. I said, listen, this is how it works. For every 25 phone calls you make, you're going to set up one appointment, right? He goes, yeah. I'm like, for every 2 appointments, one's going to cancel. He goes, that's true. For every 4 appointments we have, we'll close 1 deal. So that's our ratios. So this is what you got to do. And when he saw the numbers, he goes, okay, so this is all I have to do. I'm like, this is the minimum expectation for you to buy a house. That dude's life changed in the course of 6 months. He went from renting and this was a while back, so this is back pre-inflation prices. He went from spending $1,800 a month on a 1-bedroom apartment to now he bought a place and his mortgage was $900 a month. He goes, this is amazing. I'm like, it's not hard. So, and then what you realize is they have I don't want to say like they're indebted to you, but subconsciously they're like, this guy helped me do that. I need to help him with whatever he needs. And then when you start building that joint accountability, joint expectations upon each other, that's all it takes. There's never been an appointment that they've asked me that a salesperson will ask me to go on that I've said, no, I don't want to go on that. It'll never happen. No matter how bad especially with new people, they set up the worst appointments. I'll never miss one. Reason is they need to know I'm in their corner with them. Once they know you're in the trenches with them, you're going to grow. They'll never leave you. Like they'll never have that effect. You'll get the most out of your team. So that's pretty big.
That's great perspective. I really appreciate the way you laid that out. In one of our programs, we talk about that concept. We call it alignment, where, to your point, that person, and I think this is a fair thing for them to have, they don't frankly give that much of a care about the number the company says they need to hit, right? It's an abstraction. It's a meaningful abstraction, but it's an abstraction. It doesn't impact their life. What does impact their life is the money associated with it. And we're far more motivated by cutting our daughter's college tuition check or taking our wife on that vacation or buying that car or playing that golf or whatever their thing is. And if you know that, it becomes a lot easier to come back to them and say, hey, you're behind on your ability to put that deck on your house this month than you are going to them and saying, hey, you're behind on your quota. And that subtle shift as a leader, it just changes everything. Yep. And your ability to show that you care, you understand them, you help them map out the math, you change their life. Now you've got someone who's going to follow you for life because you've helped them. That's our primary job as a leader, is to advance them, influence them towards an advantage, is the operational definition we use over here.
Love it.
That's a great story. Great way to put it.
Love it.
So, in sales, that play you just described, I would call simple, not easy, right? We can do the math on any given sales process. And the more defined it is and the more history there is, the easier it is to titrate the numbers required to, at the end of the process, spit out the desired amount of success. Maybe it's realistic, maybe it's not, but we can calculate it. You very quickly, in any other dimension of business, lose that quantifiability because almost nothing has the same internal scoreboard as sales does. There's a couple that might, right? Marketing to some degree with funnels and maybe account management, depending on your process, but it falls off fast in your ability to quantify the process. But now, as you moved into operational roles, as you started overseeing more than salespeople, how did you have to shift your playbook so that you could maintain the concept without the ability to show a guy he needs to make 100 calls to net a deal, and therefore he needs to make X 100 calls to make the amount of money he wants?
So one of the guys that I worked for, I didn't particularly like him all that much. He was a real hard ass, and he lacked empathy a lot. But he said something that'll kind of stick with me forever. And it's as a salesperson, like I really like it. He goes, in any company, it doesn't matter what your actual title is. You only have one of two roles. I was like, okay, you're either in sales or you're in sales support. And I remember when I heard him say that, I was like, at first I was like, because I just had a genuine dislike for him. I wanted to blow him off. I'm like, get out of here. You're full of it. And then I started I don't know why, but that phrase, it really resonated with me because at the time I was in sales. So I'm like, yeah, everybody should be in support. If you're not helping. And then I looked around, like, what about the janitor? What's the janitor have to do? And I thought to myself, if I bring a client in to the office and my office isn't clean, they're not going to get a good representation of who we are. So the janitor technically is in sales support. I was like, okay. CFO. Well, if our people aren't getting paid, our bills aren't getting paid, we're going to lose our reputation and we're going to lose clients as well that way. I'm thinking to myself, wow, every company, the lifeblood of every company is sales, right? Unless you're even a nonprofit, you still have to have revenue. You have to have everything needs to come in, right? The only company that I can think of that's not worried about revenue first is the government. They like to spend it first. But everything else, everywhere else you look, you're either in sales or sales support. So, and I do apologize. I think I forgot the gist of the question. But when I look at it, I'm sorry, you're talking about how things changed moving into an operational. Yeah. So I didn't change that approach. I still made sure everybody in the company realized they're in sales. And I mean, I have a bookkeeper who thinks I'm crazy for telling her she's in sales. And she's like, what do you mean I'm in sales? I'm like, well, listen, if you need something, you're in sales. End of story. And she looked at me and she goes, how does that work? I'm like, so I broke down every single person's job at the company. Our salespeople are obviously in sales. That doesn't need an explanation. Recruiters. They're like, we're not in sales. We're not salespeople. We're recruiters. I'm like, I would disagree with you. They're like, what do you mean? I'm like, well, what do you want this person to do? They're like, well, we want them to interview. We want them to interview for this job. I'm like, so you want something, right? They're like, yeah. I'm like, so you're in sales. You need to sell this opportunity to somebody that's already happy where they are. How are you going to do that? So that took forever because my recruiters did not want to admit they were in sales.
Oh yeah, most don't.
They were staunchly against it. Now they're starting to understand that when somebody applies for a job, very little sales needs happening, but anybody can get that, right? But when I need to hire a CIO for a position, they're normally pretty happy making a lot of money. Why would they transition?
Yeah, your job is to change their mind. If your job is to get somebody to do something they otherwise would not do, and the predetermined outcome is something you want, you're selling.
That's it. So then my bookkeeper, she was my favorite one. She goes, no, I'm a bookkeeper. I get hours. I do payroll. Da, da, da. You don't need any. I'm not in sales. I said, well, how do you get your hours? She goes, what do you mean? I'm like, if somebody's late on hours, sending us their time card back, how are you getting that? She goes, well, I just sent them an email. I'm like, did they get back to you right away? She goes, well, no. Sounds like you're not a good salesperson. And she looked at me and she goes, what do you want me to do? So I kind of walked her through, this is what I would do. I showed her, how do you get somebody to send you their hours without having to ask them, making them feel like I need to send their hours. I love it. It's called nuance. How do you get somebody to do something that you want, but make it seem it's their idea, right? So if somebody's not sending you their hours fast enough, that might mess up them getting their paycheck on Friday, right? Hey, listen, we're having some issues with payroll. They need to get all the hours in by Wednesday in order to pay you on Friday. If I don't have that in, your paycheck may be a couple days late. You think we ever have issue with hours again?
Yeah, right.
Never gonna happen. So nuance is a big thing of that. Making people take ownership, take pride, and then make it feel like it's their idea. So when I came here, I made sure everybody understood the lifeblood of our entire company is sales. And if you're not helping us with sales, your value to the company is going to be diminished. And that's probably why I lost half the staff within 6 months, because people like going through the motions. They didn't want any ownership. They're like, no. I'm like, listen, guys, go work for a big company. You'll be another cog in the wheel. You'll be another number there. They'll never know who you are, and you'll be very happy there. Here, no, man, we're a smaller company. I know everybody in this company. Everybody knows at any time you can wear a different hat. And my receptionist is my favorite. Her job is to answer the phone, open doors, and she runs our 9:30 meeting. That's it. There will be days I'll walk up to her like, hey, I need X, Y, and Z. And she'll be like, all right, I'll do it right now. And you can see she's excited to take the ownership of it. So depending on the kind of team you create, Sometimes you want people to stay in their lanes. For us, that is not us at all. I tell everybody, I love ideas. If you have a better idea of what we're doing, tell me about it. But I do have one rule about complaints. I have no interest in your complaints if you don't have a solution. So I tell everybody, if you're going to come to me with a problem, that's fine, but you better tell me what your solution is to that problem. And I don't know if I answered your question at all. I went off on a tangent there, but if any of that was good, let me know.
Yeah, well, I think it tracks, right? What I heard you say, the big answer you gave is it's still all about alignment. You help people recognize what they're really trying to do. In your bookkeeper's case, she's really trying to not have to harass a bunch of people because she's responsible to somebody for getting payroll out. And that person gets complained to if somebody's check gets missed. Mm-hmm. That person, her boss, really wants her to be a more effective salesperson so that she can not get yelled at about someone's paycheck not getting in. So there's a huge alignment piece to it. And I think my perspective on this has been one of the reasons that sales is so much easier or simpler, not easy, simpler, is because you have a scorecard, and that scorecard is a direct reflection of a process. Right. Sales is a process, not a skill. It's made up of skills, your ability to close or discover or qualify or objection handle, negotiate. Those are skills. Sales is this big process. It's got multiple steps, and depending on what you sell, maybe more, maybe less, but there's about 7 steps in any sales process, and you can check each one of the boxes. Like, all right, I did it or I didn't. Because of that, it's that process view that makes it easier to guide somebody through all the necessary things it takes for them to be successful and get what they want. So sure. Sales is just better quantified. But most jobs are processes. Your bookkeeper, your accountant, your lawyer, most of what people are doing is some function of receive information, process of discernment, and downstream actions that may or may not require more information and more discernment. But you could chop it up into some stream. And if you have a view on that stream, even if you don't know the stream intimately, but you could ask the other person, hey, what's the process you follow? You can run that same play in just about any arena, because that's what the real play is. It doesn't really have anything to do with selling. It just has to do with process observation and analysis. What do you think about that view?
I think that's incredibly accurate. And I'll kind of back it up with a sports analogy. I feel like sales, if you're looking at a football team, would be like your wide receivers, your running backs, your quarterbacks, people that are putting up statistics all the time, right?
Yeah, your skill positions. The easier to show up on my fantasy team, the number of great blocks you made as a left tackle.
And then I feel like the only time you hear about the left tackle or the center is when there's a mistake.
Yeah, no one's celebrating your bookkeeper because they didn't make any mistakes in the last 6 months, but you hear about it when your 10K looks terrible.
That's right. And that's one of those things where it's difficult because, like you said, there's a scorecard. The only scorecard you have for offensive line is how many sacks did you give up? And that's not a good statistic. You want the number to be 0 all the time. So I'm 100% with you. You're 100% right. It's a lot easier to track things when there's a tangible result versus when you're like, as long as nothing's wrong, it's okay. And it is, you're 100% right.
Well, it's interesting because the ability, the football analogy is perfect. Most sports are because we have visibility of them, because we have game film of them, and because each position in any given sport has a prescribed set of best practices that are pretty well known at this point, right? Like how you be an outstanding left tackle and how you be an outstanding running back are like, they're distinct, but pretty quantifiable plays that you would be steered into early on, and you'd practice again and again and again. That breaks down, that visibility and that set of best practices really breaks down inside of white collar jobs. Like in the blue collar jobs, it's actually the same. If you're a really good welder, if you've turned out of the union as a master welder or journeyman welder, you got there by a certain set of prescribed best practices, and somebody can see the results tangibly and be like, that's a shit weld, or actually, yeah, that you did 3,000 of those perfectly. You're now at master level. That's not true in accounting, in legal, in customer care, in so many professions, but telemetry has improved in sports. So actually, linemen are actually graded not just on the number that they give away, but they're actually graded on a scale now. They're like, I forget the name of the company that has
Pro Football Focus.
There it is. That's them. Yeah, PFF. They've got a great lineman scoring system, which if you play fantasy football and you like to figure out who's going to have a great line this year, is a pretty helpful set of stats to use, right? It's probably helpful for real football too. I just don't know shit about how they do that part. But in business, what I think is happening, and this is where I want to take this question, I think the vertical application of a lot of newer technology, especially those that are built on top of Claude or LLMs, really allows for a different set of telemetry than we've been able to have before. The potential for a process to be better defined, scorecarded, automated maybe, but at least have some optics on the process, not just the outcome, seems like it's becoming easier and easier. And I'll give you a simple example. I've got a buddy that runs a hyper specialized agency that just does operations for accounting firms. And his whole business is built on the ability to get inside of a company, ask enough questions to understand their processes, and then build them a set of automations and dashboards that give them better telemetry, kind of like a CRM would provide for a sales process on all the processes all their people are running, so that they have a sense of capacity and where any bottlenecks exist. And instead of it being a gut call thing, because he's hyper specialized in a certain size of accounting firms, they can build that out. They couldn't have built it out 3 years ago very easily because you couldn't Claude code things and you just couldn't API everything, and so many technical barriers existed. Are you seeing any of that? Are you able in the last couple of years to layer in better optics on processes now than you may have been able to do before?
So yes and no. I feel like right now with especially with AI in the cloud, what we're looking at there is we're in its infancy, and so many people are trying to figure it out, trying to understand how to do it. I'm actually in a Claude course right now. What I've realized is I don't know how. I'm like, all of it's Greek, right? I'm very good at numbers. I understand numbers. I'm not an IT person. I'm trying. So I went back 6 courses before it to Claude 101. Like, what is Claude, right? And how do you use it? And I'll tell you right now, I'm still not 100% sure. It looks like a mixture of automation and AI mixed together, which is great. It'll do a lot of stuff for you, which I can't wait. One of the things that we're working on right now is we'll have a client come in and say, I need 50 people. So to onboard 50 people, it takes my admin team a lot to do that. Because that's 50 people, there's onboarding documents, there's payroll, there's a lot of paperwork that needs to go out with it. So one of the things that we're working on right now is how do we incorporate some sort of automation? And that's our internal project right now. And a lot of what we're trying to do is, as we grow, we're realizing that where the bottlenecks are. And a lot of the bottlenecks is operational. When you only had like 40 people billing, you don't need a practice for that. That's 40 people. You can manage 40 people pretty easy. Right now, we're over 100 people right now, and we're in talks of a merger and acquisition to get even bigger, and we would almost double in size. At that point, we're going to need way more standardization, a lot more automation. So when we enter a deal and we say this person got hired, it needs to auto process all the paperwork. We're working on building an API right now to where there are a lot of the large ATS systems or the people software that are out there is like the Bullhorns, Fieldglass, Beelines, and when a contractor enters hours into the system, then it gets approved by the manager. So once it's approved, that API gets triggered and it'll auto import those hours into our system. So then we don't need to ask for hours. It's already uploaded. That way our billing is 3 days faster. Payroll is 4 days faster because we don't have to worry about doing payroll at all. It just automatically triggers. And then the next step for us is to create an automatic report that automatically sends everything for payroll to get paid out. So we're working on that integration. And what we realize is we don't really want to hire another person because at the end of the day, listen, I love people. People make mistakes. So the more you grow, the more problems we're going to have. We're looking, how can we reduce that as much as possible? I'd love to hire 3 more salespeople, not 3 more admins, because admins at the end of the day, they're in the cost bucket. They're not in the revenue bucket. Sure. So we're trying to see how can we offset that.
Well, there's this, I think right now, the limiting factor for most application of vertically applied AI, which is how I think about where it has to go, right? Like Claude is one thing, but it's a horizontal platform you can do a million things with. To make it hyper relevant to staffing, especially the type of staffing you do, which is quite nuanced compared to other types of staffing. It always is across most fields, but especially staffing. You really have to build something on top of Claude or OpenAI or something that's hyper specialized for you. But the real limiting factor seems to be there's this truism of you can't automate what you don't already know how to do.
Right.
It's amazing how little we actually understand what we do. We just do it. It's instinct, right? So the ability to turn that instinct into a playbook and say, oh, when we say onboard 50 people, these are all the steps. And sure, they live in some SOP somewhere that was created 4 years ago, but they don't live in an updated live document of here's how we did it yesterday. That seems to be the bottleneck or limiting factor for most companies to go, whoa, we have to spend how much time and energy figuring out what we actually do before we could ever automate it? Forget it. Let's just keep going.
Yep.
And that's a real like point of tension. It seems like for most companies, that's what it sounds like you're sharing over there.
Very much. It's like going to the grocery store without a grocery list.
Yes.
Right. You show up and you're like, if you don't look through your cabinets and your fridge, like, all right, what do I actually need?
Yeah,
you write it all out.
It's bits and snacks, and your wife's gonna be like, "What did you do? Why was this? What's for dinner? How does that work?"
And then the number one extra thing I've got 9 bags of tortilla chips at the house because I never remember, like, did we eat those? I'm like, I'm gonna get them anyway.
Never
get all these tortilla chips, and you're like, all right. So I'm like, okay, it's go to the store with a plan. Like and a lot of times we don't want to take the time. I'll figure it out when I get there. Like it doesn't with this, it doesn't work like that. You actually have to have a good formula in place. And for me, like I'm a type. I don't know if you're familiar with the disc profile.
Mm-hmm.
I'm a massive D, like just as big. I'm like, there is nothing else in my path. I'm just a D. And then I think to myself, that's why I'm so bad with the AI stuff, because AI stuff is so detailed, thought out, thorough. And I'm like, man, the C would love this. If you found an SC combo, they would be great at maybe AR or at this Claude architecture.
Yeah.
Me, on the other hand, I'm like, no, listen. I just want to eat the hot dog. I have no idea. I don't care how you make the hot dog. Just give it to me. Make sure it tastes good. Put a little relish on it, and we'll be fine.
Yeah. Well, it really is it is a real limiting factor to the business applications of AI right now, right? The early adopters made up of maybe the S&C or the tech, the bleeding edge of tech adopters, which don't tend to be able to bring that personality into corporate decision making, because my bleeding edge preference doesn't mean we should spend $100,000 on this thing. Doesn't tend to work out yet, and that's why no one's really blown up.
That's why even with computers all changed when Steve Jobs figured out the mouse, right? Like before that, you were plugging in, like most people, like, I can't do that. Forget it. I'm like, wait, I can just click it.
Yeah, the UI change made everything different, right? It made it far more digestible. Let's go back a moment, because you said something really interesting. In your business, staffing people don't tend to regard themselves as sales. Recruiters don't tend to think of themselves as salespeople, and yet that's absolutely the bulk of the job. In both, right? You have to sell like 3 directions, maybe more. Internally, upward, externally to the client, and down to the prospect. And like, that's the 100% the root of it. Mm-hmm. One of the interesting things about salespeople's processes is preparation. Mm-hmm. The best salespeople, just like the best quarterbacks, they spend a lot of time prepping. Mm-hmm. And they really think ahead of time of what objections do I anticipate? How do I preempt those objections? How do I find the needs before I pitch? Like, really great salespeople spend time preparing.
Sure.
And that's really difficult to do in almost any given sales profession. What are some of the preparational things you've brought over onto the staffing side as they're starting to feel more comfortable as salespeople, if any? How has that battle gone, trying to get them to prep in the same way you might prep a professional salesperson?
So don't laugh, but sometimes the easiest thing or the best thing is the easiest thing. And for me, that's role play. And you can for me, it kind of gauges their preparation or how much they know about this candidate, the role, the opportunity, and just it helps them be more confident when they pitch. So, for example, like if I'm looking on the recruitment side, the first thing I want to tell her, the first thing you got to do is you got to get the person to drop their shoulders, because everybody's here. They're like, who is this person calling me? When you get them to relax, now they're going to be open to a conversation. And then 2, you got to get them to talk. So for me, it's more, there's a lot of preparation on the position, but for me, 90% of the conversation has nothing to do with the position. Getting them to just open up first will make it a lot easier. So I say, how do we get them to drop their shoulders? Get them talking, flatter them a little bit, like make them feel important quickly. Don't sound like a spam call. That's like the biggest thing. And like, and I've got a couple of my guys who are in India. I'm like, guys, you guys have the hardest track about this. You sound like a spammer. Like, how do we prevent you from sounding like a spammer? So they're like, well, how do we do that? I'm like, well, so I a couple of things. I said, listen, I said, pretend like you're calling me. Or what I told them is like, I'm going to call you and try to poach you from where we are at this company to another company. They're like, nah, that's not going to work. I'm like, watch. So I call them up, and the first thing I do is I build up their ego. And I say, is this so-and-so? They're like, yeah, who's this? I'm like, wait. Is this the guy who's the number one recruiter at CTI for the last 5 years? Well, yeah. And then they're like, wait a second. They're totally caught off guard. And this is like, they're expecting this call and they're caught off guard. And then I start with, hey, listen, I have to ask you, what are you doing over there that's making you so successful? Oh, well, and then they start talking and I'm like, guys, it's already over. I already won.
Yeah.
They're like, what do you mean? I'm like, you're no longer suspicious of who I am. Your shoulders have dropped and you're talking about how great you are. It's over. The competition's done. I already won this. At this point now, I can only screw this up. And that's when you go in, and then, I show them, like, get them talking about themselves, get them confident about what they're doing. And then so as a recruiter, I say, listen, I have a client of mine is looking for somebody just like you. I'm sure you're very happy where you are, but do you have any friends or anybody that you think would be a great fit for this? What's the first thing they're going to say? Well, can you tell me more about the position? That's the first thing they're going to say, because now they're like, yeah, I might be happy where I am, but what are you offering?
Now I just got you to ask me to pitch you.
That's it.
Which is, that's the wizardry.
And that's the preparation. And like, I still don't know the difference between Java and C#, and I don't know. I don't care. It's like, it's such an irrelevant thing because I'm not a technical person. I'm not looking for technical fits. What I'm looking for is cultural fits. So I know the clients that we have, we know what their offices are like. Is it a younger environment, an older environment? Is it stuffy? Is it more progressive? You got to know that. So when I'm having a conversation with somebody, I want to know, is this person going to fit in there? Because what will happen is if my person goes to interview this, if our client goes to interview them, like, yeah, why did you send this person? That's not our type of person. That looks bad on me. So like what we're looking for is we're trying to get the real person to come out. We're trying to get them to be interested in the position. And that's what we send over. So like when somebody does like business with us, you're not just getting a resume that looks good. You're getting something that matches your cultural environment. That's huge. How do we do that? That goes back to the preparation of like, just how many times have we had this phone call, and I remember the first time I'm like, all right, role play with me. Hi, Zia, this is so-and-so. I have this amazing opportunity for you. I'm like, guys, that sounds awful. That just sounds so awful. Like, I would never answer that phone. You might get somebody for like $25 an hour. They'll take that phone call.
Sure.
You're never getting somebody of substance to do that because it's just no, we're good. They don't have time for that call.
That's a great point. And preparation really is the only way to help somebody think through, like, what flattering thing are you going to say to this person? What's your transitional question going to sound like to get them talking about themselves or to get them to invite you to tell them more about the position? You can do that by muscle memory if you've done it 1,000 times successfully, which at this point you have. But as you go from 100 to 200 people, that's not going to be the case. Those people haven't done it before.
Role play, and role play again. Because if you can do it, and the most uncomfortable you're going to be is role play, because you're talking to me or you're talking to your peer, you're doing the same exact thing. And it's going to make you giggle and smile because it's like, we're doing the same thing. Just remember, the person you're calling has no idea what's going on.
Yeah.
They're so green. Like you can make a mistake and they won't know. I'll know because we've been training for this for how long. They have no clue you made a mistake.
Yeah, totally.
They don't care that you made a mistake. So and then I'm like, the hardest this transaction is going to be is me and you on a call, and you're trying to sell me. Once you go talk to them, it's cake. So back to I think to answer your question, like preparation, it's role play. Role play. Obviously, look at their LinkedIn, look at what they've done, see who's bragged about them, do a little bit, 3 minutes of research. You should know enough about this person to where you can have a conversation.
Yeah. Well, it's making me think, right? You got the Leo DiCaprio behind you, and that makes me think of Boiler Room. Do you remember that? Like some of the examples of them on the sales floor and some of the things they would say, like the client doesn't know any better. Again, ethically, who cares if we're not talking about that part of it. We're talking about the tactical communication reality that they were brilliant at in that movie and also in Wolf of Wall Street there.
The maximum I can sell you is 2,000 shares. Whoa, wait, why only 2,000? I love that. That was so good.
way. So good.
I loved it.
So you're going to go from 100 to 200 people.
Mm-hmm.
A staffing company. So if anybody's well equipped to find those 200 people, that extra 100 people, it might be you. Like, often companies have a hard time eating their own cooking though. So like, I've worked with a lot of marketing agencies, and when you ask marketing agency, hey, how do you find new clients? And they all say referrals, and you're like, wait, hold on. You don't run your own marketing programs? Like, that seems backwards to me. How does what are some of the things you've learned in staffing for your own recruiting company where it's been hard or easy to eat some of your own cooking and best practices?
So I will tell you, it is exponentially harder for you to get a new client than it is to find a new candidate. I mean, exponentially harder. And I tell all my sales guys the exact same thing. You need one client a year to be successful. Max, one client a year to be successful. Versus a recruiter, you're going to need 5 good candidates a month. So it's completely different. So when you say eat your own, for me, like if you tell me like, hey, we got 100 jobs come in, I'm like, yeah, no problem. We'll figure that out in 30 minutes. We'll figure that out. We'll have a plan in place. We'll go. We use AI on the recruitment side already. So whether it's we put a post out to get candidates, we can do an email blast to find candidates, LinkedIn to get a candidate, however which way we find candidates, that's easy. We can filter them, we can put them through the funnel, and it's locked, loaded, ready to go. Finding the client is way, way harder. Mm-hmm. Because here's my issue. I'm going to come to you and tell you that how do I tell you you're not good at finding people? I'm challenging your competence in firing people, right? That's, imagine, so a lot of times you have to go through HR. HR's our worst nightmare. Like, oh, work with HR. We're like, because if you have to work with HR, that's literally their job, is to find people, right? So that's the thing. So we love to go through, project managers, product managers, directors of IT, SVP, anybody that's high enough up the food chain that has a team. That's who we like to go with. That's who we like to, like, that's who we target when we go prospecting, we go to networking events, email blasts, whatever we do. Kind of back to the law of large numbers. This one stinks because you got to make a lot more phone calls to get one. Like our biggest thing is, I say, guys, go look for jobs that have been posted for more than 90 days. Because if a job's been posted for 90 days and they haven't fulfilled it yet, it's either not important, they forgot to bring it down, or they're in dire, dire need. I'll take a 30% chance.
Yeah.
Right. So that's kind of what we look. That's kind of what we look for.
So you'd be an interesting role. I know you mentioned on the technical side, you don't know a lot about maybe Claude or the LLMs or some of the AI tools, but I suspect you have your pulse on employment trends in general, based on what you do. There's a lot of perception, let's just call it, of where the job market will be going industry by industry as more and more technology moves in, right? So coding 6 months ago, a year ago, people would have said, and we're saying, oh my God, coders are going to be extinct. And yet it sure seems like the vast majority of people that employ developers want more of them, not less of them. They've just been supercharged, and it's unlocking a part of the market that wasn't available before. So the pie got bigger, and we need more developers, not less, because of this technology. So maybe share your perspective, if you would, on the horizon. Maybe it's specific industries, trends, I don't know, of employment, and how we should think about that, or how you're thinking about it over the next several years with technology potentially displacing people.
So a couple of things that immediately pop out to me. Number one, if you want to be a remote employee, you better be a revenue producer, because you will be replaced. And here's why. And I tell this to everybody. When I say a revenue producer, it's pretty simple. I have a sales guy that is remote, and I will never replace him because he generates revenue. He's an add to the company. If you're a cost center to a company and you want to be working remote, not in the office, they will replace you. And they will replace you with foreign workers that cost about half of what you cost, and up to 75% if you go to India or you go to the Eastern markets. Like right now for us, one of our big things that we do is we do LATAM. We're huge in Latin America. I'm going to find you somebody on the same time zone, same competencies. A lot of them are U.S. educated, like they came here for computer science degrees. and their English is fantastic. I live in South Florida. Everybody has an accent. So like for us, it's like not a big deal at all. And if I gave you the option of, well, you can have Bob, who lives in Fort Lauderdale, doesn't want to commute to Miami for $150,000 a year, or you can have, Raul, who's down in Colombia, and Raul's going to cost you $65,000-$70,000 a year. Like I'll take two Rauls, and it's not even a question anymore. So I tell everybody, if you're not willing to go into the office, you better really, really be valuable. You better be irreplaceable. That's number one. Get to the office. Show up. Two things that are going to happen there. Number one, you're going to grow professionally. And number two, you're going to be non-replaceable. Like they're not going to want to replace you. Number two, every single application or every single job description we're getting now is standard. And then there's a last line, AI. How are they using AI to do their job? What platforms can they use? Every single one now is asking for AI. Every company right now that we're looking at, it has FOMO. They don't want to miss out. They're like, we don't know what it is. And that's my favorite thing. They have no clue what AI is. They just know they need it. Otherwise, they're going to be left in the dust.
Yeah.
So that is a big, big thing right now. Find a way if you right now, I don't care what you do for work, how can you utilize AI in what you do? You are exponentially more valuable to the company and to your next employer or to yourself.
Yeah, that makes sense. I want to straw man the case that you're going to be replaced by AI, and I want you to shoot it down for me. Is that okay? I've been thinking through this quite a bit based on some of the companies that I run over here, and I've got this position. I haven't had a chance to socialize it yet. So this is kind of a fun first for me. And I'd really like someone who's more qualified than me, you, to beat up my argument a little bit. Would that be all right?
I'll try, but my concern is I agree with you. So.
Well, maybe, I don't know. We'll see. Here's my thought. A year ago, I would have said the same thing that you're sharing, that I really think certain industries in particular are very much at risk of short-term and long-term replacement by automation or agentification of AI. Mm-hmm. That would have been my position even 2 months ago. But it's really changed after hearing a couple different people speak about this topic. One was Jensen Huang, the CEO of NVIDIA. A couple of the guys, a couple of guests have been on the All In podcast over the last several months that have just caused me to think differently about it. And I read a few essays that made me think differently about it. So here's my argument. We'll see if it bears any water here. In the 1950s, ATMs were just starting to be conceptualized. Computers were coming about. Banking seemed like a hot application. By the 60s and 70s, I forget the name of the company, but they had developed the first ATMs in partnership with IBM, and they started to roll out. And the fear was all the teller jobs are going to go away. And what happened was, between 1970-ish and 2010-ish, the number of teller jobs skyrocketed, didn't go down. The number of ATMs obviously skyrocketed as well. And the perspective was, oh my gosh, these ATMs do the same job. They perform the same task function as a teller. Why are we going to need tellers?
Okay.
But what happened was the ATM allowed banks to regionalize with significantly less risk, because instead of putting 4 branches in one geography, you could put 1 branch and 15 ATMs. And now you could have an office in Chicago or Des Moines or wherever. And so what you saw was the number of tellers didn't go down. The number of tellers globally went up, or at least in North America, but the number of tellers per branch kind of plateaued. They didn't need more. They didn't need less. But the number of jobs overall went up because the pie of the number of banks that needed served was significantly bigger.
Okay.
Similar thing happened in 2020. There was a real fear in 2018, 2019, 2020 that radiologist jobs were going to disappear with computer vision. Once computer vision is good enough, why do I need some dude to bleary-eyed stare at my x-ray and tell me what form of cancer I have? So they literally saw a decline in the number of people applying to be radiologists in school. That specialty started to become a riskier one to pursue. Fast forward 6 years, because hospitals like to make money like banks do, you need a lot more radiologists. Not than you would have needed had people kept going at the same rate, but the number of radiology jobs has increased dramatically because looking at x-rays is not the purpose of a radiologist. The purpose of the radiologist is to coordinate care for the cancer patient with the physician. The task was interpreting these X-rays. And so because you could do the task faster and remove that bottlenecking function from the process, you actually had a lot more patients you could serve. The limiting factor was never cost. The limiting factor was we can't serve enough people fast enough.
Right.
So those are two stories. I have three others I'm not going to go into because it's a bit long-winded, but I think, at least in the short term, we're definitely going to see some displacement, right? Oracle laid off 30,000 people last week or the week before. It's obvious we're going to see some right sizing in certain specific places. But I suspect that right sizing is going to take place as the pie gets bigger in a lot of specific jobs. Coding is one, digital marketing is another. Obviously, radiology is one that we've used before. And so my suspicion is that, yes, somebody with AI might take your job. Yes, your job in the short term might be displaced, but the pie is going to grow so much bigger that there's going to be a lot more jobs for people who were probably overqualified for the job they just got displaced from. Because we've been employing a lot of people in jobs that we wouldn't really need to put a human in. You don't need a full-size functional human brain to do many of the tasks required in a lot of companies. It's just that we don't know how to train a dog or a robot to do it yet. But if we did, that brain is far more valuable applied somewhere else in a company. And if you have cultural fit, which is what your company looks for, that person would probably be valuable somewhere. All right, that's the basis of my argument. Shoot some holes in it. What am I not thinking about? Or what are you seeing in the world that tells you, no, I don't think that's the case?
I think your argument holds some water. A couple of things to look at. So look at your ATM one. It allowed regional branches to grow. What you're really looking at is you're making your employees far more efficient, right? So one person is able to, like you even said with the radiologist, they're able to expedite more patients faster, see more patients. Your ATM,
the process more efficient. They're making the human more effective. They're aligning them more on the purpose of what they're supposed to do by removing things that don't really need to be, they don't have to do in order to perform the function required. The purpose.
And you're going to see that more and more and more. Like you saw that at McDonald's, right? Now, when you walk into a McDonald's, you don't go to the counter, you go to the kiosk, you order, right? You saw that in car manufacturing. Before, you had thousands of people working in a factory. Now you don't. Now it's all automated. It's all done via robots and what are those things called? It's factory line, right? It's all assembly line. What we're seeing, and we're gonna see this through until the end of mankind, is we're gonna see advances in automation, advances in efficiencies. That's just what we do. What that tells me is we cannot get complacent as a person. We have to continue to evolve our skills, get better and get better, right? Now, the good part is in sales, I don't think this is ever going to hit sales as long as people are buying from people. I think the more Amazon we get, the less it's going to be people on people. But I think in the business world, I think you're going to see a lot of B2C get changed. But I think B2B, I don't think that's going to change for a long while, only because people do business with people. Now, but if I'm buying something from Amazon, after a while, I as a consumer can just create my list and it'll go on Amazon. Eventually, this is going to happen. I'm going to create my shopping bot and say, hey, this is what I need. It'll go on Amazon. It'll start sorting through and say, oh, this is on promo. I'm buying this one. It'll deliver. Boom, 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 boom. Everything will show up. It'll happen automatically. It might send it to me for a verification as the client, but I think B2C, we're going to see very big time changes in sales. But I will, again, kind of back to your original point, like poking holes in it. I don't think you're going to get more jobs. I think you're going to get more efficient people. You're going to get people that can do 4 or 5 times the workload. Just case in point, in my world, we use an AI software that can take one recruiter and turn it into 10 recruiters. Because a lot of what we do in recruitment is we get a resume and we have to look through the resume and check it towards the job description, see does this person work out or not. Then we have to call them and see is all the stuff they're telling me on the resume, is it actually real or not? We now have a bot that will read the resume. If it matches, it says, all right, great. Then it'll send them a text message and say, hey, you've been selected for this position. When are you available for your initial interview? Then they'll say, I'm available right now. It'll call them and say, hey, this is Sophie, the AI bot. I'm step 1 in your interview process. My job is to get you hired as soon as possible. If I'm looking for a job, I'm taking that call. And then it's going to ask them 5 or 6 questions. If it passes those, then it can get passed on to the recruiter, or it can set up an interview with the BDM. Like, imagine, and that'll do it instantaneously. So if I get 1,000 resumes that came in, that would take my team 2 weeks to go through, versus now it just all happened instantaneously. So what we're doing is, instead of me having to hire 50 more recruiters, I'm making my recruiters 50 times more efficient. And we're going to see that across the board in every aspect of life. So that's just something for people to kind of keep in mind, is how replaceable is what you're doing. You might think it's not. At some point it will be. Or like, how much more could you be doing? Start using AI yourself to leverage it.
I think that latter question, how much more could you be doing, is where I think the bulk of the pie is going to get bigger argument lives. Because to your point, yeah, you're making your recruiters 50% more efficient, or 50 times more efficient. You also told me you're about to try to hire 100 people. Those go hand in hand, right? So the limiting factor, I think this is all hunch and theory, right? It's your bad ideas to good ideas. Let's socialize them. Let's get closer to the truth by getting it wrong for a bit. I think there's something to the limiting factor for a business is often not the marginal gains possible by eliminating a couple hours from each person's day, or by 50xing how fast you can onboard a particular number of clients. Because let's just say you can onboard or you can get started with 50 times more people that Sophie has talked to fill roles you've been contracted to fill. You've eliminated that as the bottleneck. That's fantastic. That's no longer the limiting factor to your process. Now there's a new limiting factor, probably people related still, where discernment is required, where relationship is required. So I think what it's going to do is end up highlighting the parts of processes that really do require human ingenuity, discernment, relationship, those things. We're going to hire more of those people.
I agree.
Because the bottleneck's off the table. Now I can have 1,000 people come through my process next week. Oh my God, how are we going to talk to all those people?
Yeah.
I need more human beings. And maybe someday we have a perfect bot that does an awesome job of sorting through, moving further down the process. But in the short term, I think it's going to open up new opportunities for most people. But your point is valid. If the people who get displaced don't go learn a new skill, that's probably going to be a big limiting factor.
But that's been since the beginning of time,
100%.
right? So like anytime we fix a bottleneck, a new one's going to show up. So like kind of like with our point of like siphoning through 1,000 resumes instantaneously before, that was my bottleneck. Now the next part of the food chain. So then the next part, that's going to get fixed. And then there's going to be another new part. And then, like you said, I think you're right. People just need to be adaptable. They need to figure out what's the next thing and how am I going to adapt to it? Because like, even like people are taking the easy way out with like doing Uber or something, they're doing that. That's going to get replaced. You're seeing Uber will be gone in 10 years.
Yeah, Waymo and Tesla or Elon's solution to it are coming hot and fast. And they should. Frankly, they really should. So one of the things that I think that's going to lead to, and this has been a topic with quite a few guests and other business owners I've talked to, let's fast forward a few years. Let's fast forward a decade.
Okay.
A developmental generation. Let's fast forward that amount of time, which is different depending on the industry you're in, right? How long does it take to become a good salesperson? Obviously, it depends on what your training is and what your mentors are. But in general, it takes an N number of years of iterations of selling and failing and being bad at it before you're actually pretty good at it. And that's true in any given profession. Let's go 2 cycles of that, whatever that is in the given field.
Okay.
If all of those jobs have been automated at the entry level and nobody gets to cut their teeth doing Sophie's job and learning how to talk to somebody here, there's this talent glut you could foresee where like, man, we don't have as many people that went through that process who are now, level 3, 4, 5 hires, because for the last 2 cycles, we haven't been developing those people at scale. We've automated all of that stuff. There's this pipeline of development that happens every year that seems like the tap could be turned off and we could, in 5 years, find ourselves going, dang it, there's really nobody qualified to take this next role because we automated away all the learning processes they would have gone through. What are your thoughts about that perspective?
Would you say accountants today are better than they were 40 years ago?
I don't think I know how to compare, but I would suspect yes. Yeah, the calculator, QuickBooks Online, lots of tools like that, for sure.
I would say those skills that you're talking about, like I would tell you right now, if we went into a high school and gave them a multiplication table, they'd probably not score as well as we did because we had to memorize them and know them, right?
Yeah.
The calculator has made multiplication almost like an unnecessary skill. Like you can do it on your phone. Like back in the day, remember you had the watch that had the calculator on it. Calculators have moved us. And that's such a primitive technology we're talking about, right? I would say there are certain things. I would say communication is going to take the biggest hit. But I think so many skill sets are going to be like for example, riding a stick shift car. I would say 50% of the population does not know how to drive a stick shift car.
Much higher percentage than that, for sure, right? I grew up driving a stick, and we're of the last generation that would have, but it's not common.
Yeah, and it's just, I think with the evolutions in technology, they're making the things we're going to forget not necessary. Now, that's not across the board, but I'm just thinking about accounting. This changed accounting. You know, like they just do it, boom. And then at a certain point, you're not even going to have to know how to use this.
Yeah.
Because I go to Excel, I can plug everything in, create a formula, boom, it's done. It's just going to change. You're going to need to know how to do algebra without having to figure out the equation. Does that make sense?
It does. Yeah, I think you're right. Communication skills, we can already see that, right? The number of sales leaders I talk to who go, dude, the new generation is afraid to pick up the phone. They don't have a history of memorizing their buddies' phone numbers and then just randomly talking to people before cell phones. That's not there. So getting them to pick up the phone 25 times a day to make the calls is like pulling teeth because it's just not a muscle memory thing. And that all happened before AI displaced some skills. It's just a cultural thing.
Yeah, I think you're going to see that shift. I think if you're asking me, I think the phone call is going to be dead in 5 to 10 years. And it's going to be a different form of communication. And I had a funny, don't even want to say it because I think somebody's going to steal this idea. I think we're going to create bots for ourselves that handle our day-to-day activities.
Oh yeah.
And for me, like just imagine, like I'm married, I'm done with the dating scene and all that, but imagine you are a 20-year-old right now. You don't have the communication skills we have because, you know, you lived in your phone and your computer and your whole life. So you're not used to having conversations, but you're still interested in a girl, but you don't know how to do that. So imagine you can create a bot that can go and talk to other girls' bots to set up a date for the two of you guys to go out to dinner. I had this idea. We're at a bar the other night, and I'm like, man, I looked at like some people. I'm like, man, there's no way that person's gonna approach anybody. I'm like, and I was like, wait a second, you know, it'd be really cool. Imagine like a Tinder or something, but you don't actually have to do the communicating. Your bots talk to each other.
Yeah.
They vet you guys each other out. And they set up a date for you.
It's like back in middle school where your best friend would be like, hey, you like that girl over there? Go talk to her best friend for you. And she's like, oh yeah, she likes him too. And they like pre-negotiate you're okay to go ask her for her phone number.
Like exactly that. But imagine like at the end of the day, like they're going to be able to create a bot for themselves. Like my wife is, she's a stay-at-home mom. But instead of her having to spend the time going to Amazon or going to Target, doing this, she just creates a bot that learns her daily life. That does all of the things that it needs to. It'll go to Walmart.com. It'll go to Target.com. It'll go to Amazon. It'll buy whatever she needs. And then boom, it'll set up, like I tell her, listen, if it's not on my calendar, it doesn't exist. It'll set up date nights in the calendar for us. Like, oh, hey, can you set up a date night for us? And it'll go through, it'll pick the place that I would like to want to go to. And here's the time, here's set up the reservation. It'll do all this for you. I don't think we're that far away from that.
Now, all of that capability exists today. We're building an agent that does some of those things internally in one of our businesses. And then, a buddy just launched an app last weekend that is designed to do a little bit of this with the intent of making us all better at reaching out to the people that we care about and just making it as frictionless as possible to do things. So I think you're right that's where it is going. That's interesting. So
like you talk about communication skills, you're not going to need it anymore. So maybe you know what? I better figure out how to hit the lotto now and retire because I don't know if I'm going to be replaced.
Yeah. Well, one more question I'd love to ask you is, you're in a role as a recruiting company you're in this challenging position to your point. If you're working with HR, you're replacing them. There's a bit of friction there. If you can align with the sales leader or the hiring manager, that's easier. So to some degree, you're a service provider in for them for the most degree, but you're also in a unique position to offer insight into trends in that position. You have a thought leadership role. And based on talking with you, I suspect you lean into that role at your company to try to be that thought leadership partner. Because that's what I want for staffing at my companies, is someone who tells me what I need to know to make better decisions. What are some of the thought leadership points you're articulating to your prospects or clients right now that are proving out to be really helpful for them?
Yeah. So one of the biggest ones happened last year. So I want to preface saying this. We don't have any vendor relationships, and we don't want to have vendor relationships. Everything we do is a partnership. We have Fortune 500 companies, and then we also have mom and pops. And we have everything across the board. Our mom and pops and us, when we work together, we realize it's not like if Xerox owes you money, you're going to get paid. There's Xerox. There's no question about that. Some of your mom and pops, their company takes a turn, you might not get paid. And that's a big problem because a lot of our people are contractors. So we've already dished out the cash. So we have to make sure we get paid.
Right.
So when we look at every relationship as a partnership, we're invested in your success by providing you the right people and the right insight into what's going on. Last year, massive change in the IT world with the H-1Bs, right? It went from a $2,500 application to a $100,000 application.
Huge hit.
If you are hiring H-1Bs, you're not anymore. So your hiring needs don't change, but your resources do. So one of the big things we did is we sat down with any of our clients that either did hire H-1B or were planning to do H-1Bs, and we say, all right, so first we ask them, like, hey, how does this affect you guys? Well, this is what happens to us. Now we can, instead of bringing on 7 people, we can only bring on 3. Or we're like, okay, well, why don't you just bring on the 7 people, but we'll do it a little bit differently. So we'll give them different options, whether it's hitting the LATAM space, opening an office in India, maybe bringing on more junior people, like more fresh out of college people, and give them one senior person to grow and develop them. We gave them a bunch of different options, and they said, well, we don't know how to do that. I'm like, well, man, it's a good thing you have a partner that does all these things, right? So that's what will help them. We will help them through, we'll hold their hand through the whole process until it becomes their own process. And a lot of the H-1B was a really big one because that shook up the market a lot. Like we had a lot of clients that didn't want, because we didn't do a lot of H1 stuff before. Now they're all calling us, hey, what solution do you have for us? We can't do this anymore. So that's been pretty good.
I love that perspective and that position, because most companies, if you were to sit and have them honestly stack rank what they're excellent at, usually it's going to start with their product and then, or service, and then their go-to-market, and then their operation. There'd be a long list of stuff they're really world-class at in most companies.
Mm-hmm.
Towards the bottom of the list would be hiring strategy.
Yeah.
Think it's just not there. It's not the relevant competency of almost any company or any division of the company. Even HR, they have so many other things they're pulled into. Almost everybody is terrible at thinking strategically like you're describing. So I love that that's a service you have with your partners where you're like, you tell me you need 100 hires. Can we talk about that? Because let me see if I can apply some things that might help you not need that many people or need more or whatever, need different people. That's probably really valuable to them.
Yeah. And one of the things we talked to that client, they needed 100 people. We said, listen, do you have time to do that? They're like, what do you mean? I'm like, can you interview 100 people? They're like, wait a second. Then they started thinking like, oh, wait, how are we going to do that? So I said, this is what we're going to do. We're going to set up group interviews. And what that is I'm going to bring 50 people onto a call. You're going to give them your pitch. And then what we'll do at the end of it is we created a poll, or like we created a questionnaire at the end of it. And they would upload whatever information we wanted to. And the ones that actually fulfilled it, we would set up real interviews for. Because a lot of these, when you need 100 people, you're going to have to go through 5 to get 1. This automated the hell out of that. Because if you're not competent enough to upload your license into a Google form, it's not going to work, right? I hate to say it like that, but if you don't know how to upload something onto a website, probably not going to work out for this position. So we went from 50 to 7 people. Out of the 50, we would set up 7 interviews. And he goes, wow, you saved me 43 interviews. You know how much? He's like, and we play golf together. He goes, you know how many rounds of golf that is? I'm like, yeah, I know exactly how many rounds of golf that is. 43 interviews. Yeah, that's a lot.
You're keeping tabs. You owe me this many rounds of golf now.
Yeah, there's a place up here called the Park. He owes me a round and he knows it. So
Yeah, that's awesome. Hey, we're running out of time. Thank you so much for coming on. Thanks for sharing your wisdom with us. I appreciated it. If somebody wanted to connect with you, either for your thought leadership, staffing services, whatever it might be, what's the best way for someone to make contact?
Best way, you can go to our website, ctistaff.com. You can find me on LinkedIn. I'm Zia Mohi. I'm pretty sure I'm the only one on all of LinkedIn. So if you can't find me, that's a typing issue. Yeah, you can send me an email. It's zia@ctistaff.com. Anything like that. If you're local, you want to grab a cup of coffee, a drink, lunch, let me know. That's how I prefer to do business. I do not like to do this. I'd prefer let's get together, get to know each other, and see how we can help each other out.
Fantastic. We'll share the link to the website as well as LinkedIn in the show notes. And Zia, thanks for coming on, man.
Pleasure, man. Thank you for having me.
Of course. See you next week, everybody.